guest is Jennifur Diamond, and she has written a book that is called Waking Up Psychic, and she had a near-death experience that changed her life.
Hi, Anne Marie. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and you're a beautiful woman. I wanted to say that. So, I guess why don't we just look at your history and your story?
You know, when you're going through this or when you've come out of an accident like I did, I was in a car accident in 1989 and waking up in the hospital, waking up psychic. When you're going through this whole experience, you really don't think that your life is any different, or I should say my life was quite different, but you don't realize that it's such a story until years later. At least that's what happened to me. Years down the road, having this psychic ability, I've met numerous people that have been born with this ability or came from families with third, fourth, fifth generation, psychics. And for me, it was a little bit different in the respect that I went on vacation to Florida and got in a car accident almost immediately after I got there, like the next day, actually. And so the day and a half that I was there, everything seemed to kind of all run together. But waking up in the hospital close to 2 days later was really the biggest shock. And people always ask me, what was it like when you were on the other side? Because I went from 1 minute laying by a swimming pool to the next minute being surrounded by bright lights and, in a completely different dimension. So, this has been, it's been very life-changing to say the least, but I didn't realize it until, I would have to say recently, until like probably the last 10 years, with people, more and more wanting to find out about, the afterlife and psychics. Back in the early 90s, there was no social media, there was no internet, so
Isn't that strange to think? That was not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like ages ago.
It's just all changed.
Yeah.
But not all people that have experiences as you end up being psychic, though, do they?
No, they don't. But when I was in this accident, when I woke up, I had lost my memory. That was a big portion of it. But as I came to find out, years down the road, that having memory loss from head trauma and having psychic ability is actually not as rare as I had originally thought. It's actually more common than we realize. So as much as I felt very alone over the years, after doing research and, once the internet became very popular, I realized that there was a lot of other people out there that have experienced the same thing as myself. So, that has actually opened up a lot of avenues for me. But like I said, it was difficult at first when you feel very, very alone, because for a long time I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't talk about it to anybody. So, it was difficult. It was a difficult road in the beginning.
So do you describe the lights as people, beings, energy? What do you think they were as you felt this crossing, into the next dimension after your accident?
Yeah. Well, I actually went, like I said, from literally laying by the pool to my next recollection of anything was really being surrounded by white lights, and who I really knew was in front of me was God. And I, for a long time just didn't want to talk about this, or was very shy in talking about it or communicating to other people what I had seen, until I actually had started realizing that other people had the same experience as me. I didn't, a lot of times you'll hear people going down, like they go through a dark tunnel or,
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I didn't experience any dark tunnel. For me, it was really going from one scenario to another. And once I was in this other dimension, there was no words spoken. Any thought that I had in my mind was instantly answered. And, I was able to view, at that point I was 21, I was able to view, it was as if they were showing me my last 21 years on a screen. Talking to this who I describe as God, telling me about, what my life is going to be, and that, it wasn't my time to go yet, but I had set out on a certain path in this lifetime. And, it wasn't, for me, it was all about understanding unconditional love, just understanding, in short, that we're all here and basically trying to figure it out on our own. And it's really, I think we complicate life too much. And, it's really understanding that our whole purpose for being here is really all about unconditional love and how we can help each other out. And, like
Right.
I say, you haven't had a chance to read my book yet, but what I talk about in the book is it really is, once you start doing things for other people without expecting anything in return, you can see a complete shift in your life and how things open up.
Were you a religious person before this happened?
I actually was I don't want to say very religious, but I grew up in a fairly Catholic family. And about a year after this, my accident, I had moved to Florida from New York, and I hadn't seen my grandmother in it had been probably 12, 13 months. And I was talking to her on the phone, and she was kind of struggling with something, which was personal, and I obviously hadn't seen her, and I had brought it up to her and kind of gave her advice on what to do. But I caught her off guard because I brought up personal things that nobody knew except for her. And she asked me, how do you know that? And I told her that as a result of the accident, I had abilities that, were different than what I had before. And she, kind of pried a little bit and, wanted to know more. And I said, psychic ability. And she, my grandparents, I went to church with them every weekend. I spent every weekend with them when I was growing up. And when I said that to her, she just very quietly said, I don't ever want you to bring this up again. I don't want you to talk about it again. So, it was a constant struggle with growing up in a Catholic family and to, have this, so to speak.
Do you feel that your experience was anything that you perceived it would be? I mean, like when we're little, we're told that such and such will happen and we will be at the pearly gates or whatever. Did you feel or experience any similarities to what your religious doctrine said? Or do you feel it's even deeper and even more complex?
Oh, I definitely feel it's deeper and more complex. I mean, when I had the experience of what I had in the hospital when I wasn't awake, I was not awake for about 20 hours, 25 hours, give or take. And that whole experience showed me a completely different side to, kind of what we learn or what, at least what Catholics are taught to, believe in. And I did struggle with it for a long time, continuing to go to church and continuing to go down my path. There was definitely there was a difference between the two because I knew what I was told back then, and everything over the years has unfolded just like it was told to me during this exchange that I had, so to speak. So I think it's hard to put into words if you haven't been through it. But the other side, the main thing I can say is that where we go from here is definitely nothing to be scared of. It's only to be something to look forward to. Is the nicest way.
Do you think that? Do you believe that's the same for everybody, or do you believe that? Like I was watching, I think a show on crossing over, and this one guy was talking about how he had been a gambler and unethical and a person that, he would not be proud of. And he was very, he had a massive heart attack. And he remembers thinking, oh, crap, you know, I guess this is what's going to come next, the hell, the brimfire. But to his surprise, he said he went into this unconditional love, as you said, and he was washed clean, he said. And when he came back, he was a different person. So he did not experience the hell and brimstone that he had been taught, and we have all been taught, but more so this washing of his personality, this cleansing of his ethics, and his whole personality changed, and he became the man that he wanted to be, that now that he had the second. Now, of course, I've also heard other things, when you think about serial killers and people like that, and what do they experience? Can they really just be washed clean, or is there any kind of karmic value there? But I guess the main thing is it doesn't matter. What matters is us. What matters is our own journey. What matters is, like you said, taking that profound experience with you and trying to make wisdom out of it. And you said you're asked about, questions from people all the time on it, right?
All the time. Yeah. One thing that I can tell you is that, we set up, before we come here, which is one of the things I was shown, is that we set up certain things that we need to accomplish in this lifetime, whatever it is. And from friends, family, work, love, whatever it is that you need to learn in this lifetime, if you haven't achieved it, or you've, because there's such thing as called free will, and sometimes people get caught up in that and they don't follow, it's like that gut instinct, you should be doing something else, but you choose the safer or the easier route or something that's more comfortable. In this lifetime, if you haven't achieved what you set out for, then, and I believe this, I've talked to other people about this, but if you haven't achieved that in this lifetime, you come right back that's why you can line up, and I give this example because then people can kind of understand it, but you can line up 10, 20-year-old people. Let's just it doesn't matter female or male. Some act like they're 20, some act like they're 40, some act like they're 5. But, the range of how they act is very different. But the reason that is because we've all heard that phrase, oh, that person's an old soul, or,
right.
That young soul. And it's because either they've been here many lifetimes and they're working it out and they're on their right path, and this could be one of their last lifetimes, or they're new to this world and they're just starting out, and there's a naivety about them, which is, I always find that attractive and in people I meet, regardless of their age. But yeah, you definitely, there's when you're on the other side, it was made clear to me that it wasn't my time. It wasn't even a question. I didn't even have to ask it, because everything they were showing me, I understood that I had to come back. But one thing I can say is that when you're there, you don't experience any negative thoughts, feelings, or emotions. There's none of that. The heaviness that we have in this human body, it doesn't exist. Once you're on the other side, all you feel is complete, overwhelming love. And it's, to even put it into words you can't completely.
Too shallow. Words are too one-dimensional. Do you find yourself putting a clamp on yourself when you're doing that, or do you find yourself wanting to go head first and dive into that area completely, or are you in that, what you call, the balance?
I try to stay in the balance. I try to stay balanced as far as that goes, but also too, it depends on, kind of depends on what's going on in my life at that time. or that day, I should say. So it kind of varies. But
Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
well, it depends if I'm having a little girl, you have to be having a child who's fairly young, you have to be on and 24/7, so to speak, trying to juggle that with work. Um, you know, I like to stay balanced, but before I had my child, I would spend a lot more time meditating, where I would be able to kind of really tap into bringing in individuals from the other side. But where my life is at now, I need to have much more balance, and it actually has worked out better, because it seems as though, I get information when I need it, instead of having it flow continuously, which is how it was for me at one time.
Ever have instances where a smell or a aura or something will set those memories back?
Yeah, I did. It was fun. It's funny you say that, because I talk in my book about waking up psychic. I was in this car accident with a boyfriend of mine who unfortunately had died 2 weeks later in the hospital. So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he was as well, and he was in a coma, and he had passed away as a result of it. But it was funny yesterday, because I was finishing up some stuff with the second book, and I was thinking about him, and I could clearly smell his cologne that he wore from 25 years ago. And even though it's 25 years later, I still sometimes will second guess, oh, am I fabricating this in my head, or, am I making this up? And then my daughter was sitting next to me, and she's like, do you have men's cologne on?
Oh my gosh.
And we're sitting in my living room, and the girl's husband, Bill, who's not a little guy, he was like 6'3", big guy, looked like he had seen a ghost, and he was like, Jennifur, is there someone else in your house? And I said, no. Why? And he goes, because I just saw a guy about 5'9" walking down your hall, and he described what my boyfriend had.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was early on, but then over the years it had happened so many other times when I would move that other people would see him. And I write about this because for me, as much as at first I was a little embarrassed about it, because, I didn't know what people thought about seeing somebody that had passed on or whatever, but it did at least give me validation that, I wasn't so much crazy, that I wasn't the only one that was seeing him. But yeah, my boyfriend really did come through quite a bit over the years, to the point that other people would see him.
And the name of your book?
Waking Up Psychic.
And when is it going to be out?
It should be out the middle of March, towards the end of March, middle to end of March.
The publisher?
Tate Publishing.
And your website?
PsychicsUniverse.com.
Thank you so much for being with us. We just want to thank you for giving us something new and different to talk about today, and loved having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.